Hey, families, your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so by connecting you with a qualified team of Christian counselors who specialize in grief and trauma informed care. We also offer healing groups throughout the year, and we help churches across the country to start trauma healing ministries. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today we have one of my sisters in Christ who is a part of the Faith on the Journey community on the show with us today. And she's no stranger to you. She's a return guest because she's so good at what she does. And we have a great topic that we're going to be talking about today that we'll get into in just a minute. But first, let me introduce her to you, give you a little bit of information about her background. We are welcoming to the show Reverend Dr. Naomi Mitchell, who is a member of the Faith on the Journey counseling team. She has her doctorate in ministry and homiletics and 13 years of pastoral family and marriage counseling experience. She has done groups, couples counseling, family therapy, has counseled people of all different ages and demographics. She's walked alongside of people who've had disorders, anxiety, anger issues, depression, trauma, grief, the whole nine. She is an experienced counselor who's passionate about the community, loves what she does, and I'm so grateful to call her my sister in ministry. And we have her here on the show with us again today. So, welcome, Reverend Naomi.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much, Reverend Jocelyn. I'm so glad to be back with you all. What a wonderful time I've always had with you all. So I'm looking forward to our time together today.
Yes, thank you for accepting the invitation. And I thought of you when we were having a conversation a couple weeks back about just family matters, like how sometimes it's difficult when we have issues with family. And I thought, I'm
hmm
like, let's have this as a show topic because when we have drama, if you will, with family members, and when we have issues where they've caused us pain, it can cause
hmm
tremendous issues in our lives. And so I want us to dive into that today as it relates to recovering, healing from family matters that have caused us to feel stuck, caused us to feel like we can't move forward, or has brought about some very difficult issues in our lives. And so let's jump into it by looking at some of these issues that people might face, whether it's with siblings, whether it's with parents,
Yeah.
whether, whatever blood family. And I think a good place to start is with the fact that sometimes when there's an issue that takes place in the family, we choose to ignore it. Family secrets can be a big issue that we find taking place, right? Where someone might have caused harm through abuse of some nature. There could have been some things that were done that were wrong. It might not be abuse, but it could have been just something that was malicious that took place, and it's swept under the rug. And sometimes family members are expected just to move on and act like nothing happened and just have Thanksgiving dinner with this person across the table who did them
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
And so, how have you worked with counseling patients or clients in the past who have struggled with the fact that they were forced to keep a family secret that's really hurting them deep down inside?
Yeah, it's interesting and so important, such an important topic because what I end up having to do is people have longstanding issues, which even can result in trauma, right? It's these deep wounds of the mind and of the heart that people carry with them throughout life because they have been expected, right? It's a family expectation. You know the thing, what goes on in this house stays in this house. This whole idea of not sharing what goes on in the family. And so and even those things, that are detrimental to the individual. And so, I remember that so well in my family where people would say, not people, my parents would say, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I understand, you don't want to blurt your family business out there. But when we're talking about things like physical abuse or sexual abuse or verbal abuse or family secrets that tend to harm one of the family members, that is something that needs to be shared so that the person who is impacted can get to a place of safety. But so oftentimes I have clients that come in that have dealt with things as children, and this particular family secret has gone with them throughout their life, and they can't figure out why they can't have effective relationships, or why they continue to have low self-esteem, or why they are experiencing anxiety, all types of trauma issues that they need healing from because of family secrets.
That's real, and it's such a
Hmm.
heavy weight to bear that you weren't designed to hold, and I think
Yeah.
that when we really think about how many people have been stuck because they were told to keep that secret and they can't move forward in their healing process, it's
Hmm.
sad to hear that, and sometimes you have to make a decision if you are the person who's holding that family secret to step out of what your family desires for your own healing. Now, there's ways in which you can do that, but sometimes people are not going to like you doing what you have to do so that you can heal. I think that's really what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely. That is so important because you have to at some point set some boundaries, right? And what boundaries are, they separate you from other people, right? They separate your identity from who other people are. And so it may be that family member's decision to say keep it a secret, but if it doesn't work for you, and if it's harming you, then you have to draw a line. And that is what boundaries are. You have to mark a limit, or put up a border, so that people understand that, I need this for me. It tells them that, I am different from you. I am not you. This is not who I am. This is not what I choose. I will not, keep this a secret because it is impacting me and I love myself. Sometimes, we can love other people, and I understand that. Family members, right? Like mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers that we love, it's difficult to set boundaries against those people because we don't want to hurt them. But when you really think about it, is this situation that they're asking me to keep a secret or to continue to be involved in, is this really to my detriment? You have to love yourself enough, right? Because that says to you, if they're not willing, to respect your boundaries, or if they're asking you to do something that will cause harm to you or continue to keep you in a stuck place, then you have to ask yourself, do they love me? Or do I love myself enough to say, no, the buck stops here? And so it's really all about you separating yourself from other people. Now that's difficult because this whole family system, right, is a complicated, it's very complex because it's interrelated, right, interconnected, and we influence one another by our behaviors. And as we grow up together, we are this whole system of things, of behaviors and actions and thoughts and values, right, that impact one another. And so that's important for you to be able to take a bold step to define the difference between you and them, and be able to say that my identity is important and I am not them. I love them, I am connected to them, but that is not something that I agree with. And so that is important to be able to say and to do, even if you have to practice it.
Practice it. Wow, how do you practice something like that?
Yeah, it's the same way that you've grown up with these same attitudes and feelings and values that you've done all your life. That's sort of a practice, right? It's practical. You put these things into practice. Well, in order to make a change, I think they say it takes something like 21 days to form a habit, right? And so you have to begin to form a new habit, change direction, right? Making a 180-degree turn and start to practice this different way of dealing or experiencing or being in relationship with your family. And so that is important. How do you practice it? You take a stand and you state your boundary, right? You let them know what it is that the change that you're deciding to make. And, yeah, someone you care about, this is really not about you. This is really about me. And I have made a decision that this is what I am beginning to do. I hope that you can accept it, but this is for my own safety, for my own self development. All of those things are ways in which you can begin to practice it. Now, like you said, people may not agree with you. In fact, they might not even like you. What I'm finding out is sometimes people don't want you to know what it is that you want or what it is that you like, or to separate yourself from them, because then they'll start to say things like, oh, you think you're better than everyone else, or who do you think you are? Well, that's the whole idea of learning, that you are not them, that you separating yourself and gaining awareness of your own identity and defining who you are, right? And being able to assert yourself. Some people, avoid hard conversations because it's difficult to have hard conversations, but it's not impossible.
That's good. I want you to continue on that. When you talk about being assertive and having difficult conversations, depending on your personality type, it might be easy for you to be direct. But some have
Hmm.
been so used to just kind of backing down when it comes to conflict, and it does something to you on the inside. And so, talk about the difference between being assertive and aggressive. Why is being assertive so important? And if you're not, what happens to you on the inside if you're holding all that stuff internally?
Oh, yeah. And so, there are people who are avoiders, and there are others who are assertive, and then there are others who are aggressive. Now, the difference between being aggressive and assertive, aggressive people make demands on others, and they bark out commands, and they make people feel as if it's their world, and it's just really all about them necessarily, right? That's aggressiveness, like, this is what I mean, you better do this. And see, really, you can't change anyone else. Being assertive is really about what you need, but not telling someone else what they need to do. So, for example, you can say, here's what I need in order to feel comfortable in this relationship, or to feel as if I'm a valued participant or member of this family. Here's what I need. I need to, be seen. I need to be heard. I need my answers and my thoughts and my values to be weighed the same as everyone else's. I feel sometimes as if, what I think and what I need does not matter. And so in order for me to feel as if I'm a valued member of the family or of this relationship, here are the things that I need from you. As opposed to being aggressive, it's like, you know what? If you're not going to do this for me, then I'm not going to be a part of this family. Like, I don't understand. You have to stop talking to me like that. You have to stop, saying those things. Like, that's aggressive. And people, when you use the you statements, like, people feel blamed and attacked. That's being aggressive. But being assertive is just stating your need, telling them how you feel, and being able to stick to that, right? Your authentic self, and practicing, flexing that muscle of no, like, no, this is not what I want. This is not what I need. And so here's what I need. And if they value you in the relationship, though it may be difficult to make the change for all parties, they will begin to try.
That's good.
The pandemic, domestic abuse, gun violence, depression. Unfortunately, members of your church have been experiencing tremendous pain in recent years. As a church leader, you can no longer be silent about what's happening in your congregation. You want to do more to help your members heal, but there are challenges. Pastors don't have the capacity to provide the type of counseling that trauma survivors need. And if you have a church of leaders who are willing to step up, that's fantastic. But you might not have the resources to train these leaders to provide the necessary trauma-informed care to the body. This is where Faith on the Journey Counseling steps in. We'll equip you to become a trauma healing church. We will train your staff and lay leaders on a curriculum that's been utilized in over 100 countries and has been translated in over 150 languages. This curriculum was created by the world's best psychologists and Bible scholars. And the best part is, it's extremely affordable, adaptable, and can be implemented right away. As a trauma survivor, I've gone through this curriculum myself, and I'm telling you, it was life-changing. If you're looking for a proven way to guide your members to heal from trauma, I encourage you to visit traumahealingchurch.com. Take advantage of some free resources to help your members to heal. And while you're there, please review the details on this world-proven curriculum. Thank you.
You said something previously before I asked a question about assertiveness and aggressiveness around like setting boundaries. So I want to kind of go back to that, but elaborate a little bit more on the importance of doing this, especially when you start finding yourself being codependent. So I want to talk about what is codependency and why can sometimes we find ourselves in that place with good intentions supporting a family member who might have an addiction, might have some habits that aren't healthy for them, and we find ourselves in a relationship where we want to help them but we're actually hurting them or feeding into certain things and hurting ourselves. Talk a little bit about codependency and how to navigate our way out of that into a more healthy relationship with individuals in our family.
Yeah. It's so easy to do, especially in families, because we love our loved ones, right? We care about them and we want to see them succeed. And oftentimes we want for them what they don't want for themselves. And, to a certain extent, we can encourage them and we can say, I believe in you and I know that you can stop this habit. And I know that you can have more for your life. And I know that you can reach your goals. And you can encourage them, right, and affirm them. But there comes a time when we try to rescue them. It's like being an evangelist, for instance, in dating. We want to save a person, or just in any relationships. It's like we're junior Jesus, and we think that we can actually save a person, and actually we become codependent. And sometimes we can't help people from experiencing life and the consequences of their decisions. Oftentimes we can see it coming and they can't, and we try to save them from it. And ultimately they do not receive the lesson that they need in order to say, hey, that was too much. I need to stop doing that, because we try to soften the blow, or we try to keep them from experiencing the hard things in life. But we all have to go through our own process. Life is a process, and my journey is not your journey. And as even as parents, like, we see things that we want to protect our children from. And yes, we can say things to them, we can share our experiences, but there's nothing sometimes like their own experience, and we just have to pray them through. So codependency is, I believe, keeping people from experiencing life on life's terms and trying to protect them, so that they, oftentimes we end up harming them and keeping them from receiving the lesson that even God is trying to teach them. Prayer can reach people where you cannot. And so I find that the best thing that we can do for people often is, Lord, protect them, keep them, cover them, lead them, guide them, make them aware, send other people on their path to show them, and Lord, bring them to themselves, right?
Oh, that's so good. Yes, prayer. We can't underestimate the power of prayer. And sometimes that is counter what we're used to. We're so used to kind of stepping in and fixing. It feels like we're doing something wrong by saying no. And that guilt. Oh, that guilt, especially if someone is used to you doing something for them and then they start guilt tripping you, as they say, like, oh, how, you just gonna leave me like this and blah,
Right.
blah, blah, and
Oh
have
my
you
God.
feeling bad. And so
Yeah.
how do you shift from carrying that weight that really doesn't belong to you when someone guilt trips you and your family?
And I think taking responsibility for your own part in it, right? And not blaming them for how you stay connected to them. And you know that I think that's the first move out of bondage. It's bondage, right? It's an enemy setup, you know. So we have to stop blaming others and deal with it. So then you come alongside, because obviously, if you are being codependent, then there's something that you have to do as well, some work that you have to do, as well as the work that they have to do. Why am I allowing myself to be in this position? Why do I want to feel needed in that way? Why is it me that I am for trying to fulfill a need, or is it for them? So being able to step away and examine yourself. Like, why do I have to feel or be the rescuer? You know, growing up in my family, I was always the go-to person, even though I was the youngest girl, and I was the one that still for years that people, you know, came to. All of my siblings, my parents, you know, they came to me for questions and answers and support. And I found myself, when I started having my own family, that I was still trying to be that person for them, when at the detriment of me not being there for my own family, but also at my own detriment and my own self-care. You know, I would get up in the middle of the night and go and rescue my family, or I would, you know, give money when I didn't really have it because they needed it in an emergency. And so, you know, that whole thing about your lack of responsibility or planning does not constitute an emergency on my part. And so I had to really become more self aware and understand the dynamics of my relationships with my family and those people that were dependent upon me. Like, what is it within me that I can't say no, and that I'm not okay with saying no because of the way that they're going to see me or respond to me. And sometimes that meant, you know, losing relationships, and that is hurtful and it's painful. And we don't want to lose relationships, and we want people to stay in our lives that we love. But if it's at the expense of yourself, then those relationships have to be examined. And that is difficult when it's family and loved ones that you care about.
Incredibly difficult.
Mhm.
And sometimes we have to do it because honestly, we'll never be able to go to places where God's trying to take us if we continue to stay attached to things that are unhealthy for us. And hear me, just because I might say a relationship is unhealthy or you hear the word toxic thrown around a lot, it doesn't mean that that's a bad person. It doesn't mean
Right.
that. But it could be that that family member is hurt. They might be acting out of their pain. They might be demonstrating some certain behavior that's based on them coping with certain things or whatever the case may be. So it's not a judgment thing, but you do sometimes have to put yourself first and you can be compassionate towards that individual and still put yourself first and your needs. And so finding that balance is difficult, but it's necessary.
Mhm. Oh yeah, it's so true. And the other piece is, you know, sometimes we have to stop playing victim. You know, as if the person has made us do these things, or like they made us give, or they made us make this decision. You know, we have to just admit that we've made some wrong choices in this relationship, and it's not just the other person's fault. You know, sometimes we can confuse what love really is, right? um I think that we get confused, what that love has to hurt, and love does not have to hurt. You know, we love, and we often do that. We love until it hurts. We give until it hurts, and that's not true love, right? And particularly, it's not true love for you or for the other person. And so I think that we get those things confused. That's the importance of why we have to set boundaries. And the other piece is why we have to be more self aware, more socially aware. Like, how are my actions impacting those around me? That's so vitally important.
Yeah, that's really good, Naomi. So I want us to think about for a moment how our culture plays a role in influencing our relationships, particularly our relationships with our significant others. I remember how I was talking to a friend of mine who's married, and he talked about how our cultures, based on our family dynamics and our upbringings, can be so different. One person is, metaphorically speaking, from France, another person is from Greece. And you're bringing these two different cultures that are very different together, and it can cause friction. And when we think about it in our context for this conversation, we can say, well, my family always did things this way. And the other person can say, well, no, my family did things this way. And one family dynamic might have taught one of the partners in the marriage, well, you don't talk about your pain. You have to be strong for your family, or you argue and you are aggressive in nature, or we joke on each other. We poke fun at each other. It's all in good fun. Whereas the other person, they might come from an environment where they're not used to making jokes like that. And we don't talk aggressively towards each other. We are very mild mannered, and they might take offense to that. And so I wanted you to briefly talk about how these different family dynamics and cultural upbringings, if you will, can really impact how we move forward in our relationships. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and I deal with it often. Again, in my work with couples and with families, and what like you said, what we bring from our family of origin, from our way of thinking, from our worldview, the lenses for which we see the world, you know. All of these things are impacted, like you said, by our family dynamics and our family systems, and influences these things, the patterns, the structures, what we believe the roles are. These things we carry along with us in our entire lives, right? These are the frameworks for which we see the world. And so when we get into relationships with other people who come from different backgrounds or different family of origins or have different rituals or systems, people oftentimes look at the other person as if they're wrong, or this is wrong. Like, where did you get that from, or why do you believe that, or how could you think that? And so what we have to do when we're in relationship with other people is understanding, just because you decided or you grew up doing things different, with different structures and different expectations and patterns and power dynamics in your family, doesn't make my family or my framework or my view wrong. It just makes it different. And so different is not necessarily an enemy. We can actually use our differences to strengthen the current relationship. But we have to be willing to learn from one another and understand, oh, that's why you see it that way. Empathize with one another, right? To say, oh, I see how you, or why you feel that way, or why you see the world that way. Well, in my culture, this is the way that we see things, and this is the way that we do things. So that helps you to understand the person better and to have a better relationship with them. Not that you're necessarily trying to change them. We oftentimes get into situations where we're trying to change a person, and this cultural difference may be really important to them. And so you have to, if you love a person enough, you'll be able to say, well, let's figure out how we can coexist together with our different beliefs. Some things we can leave in the past that may not be beneficial for us to bring forward in the new relationship. But then there are other things that say, hey, well, this is important to you. Let's figure out how we can implement this into our current structure, into our current framework. You can create something new, right, with even some of the old patterns or old structures or old rituals. But then there are some things that you say, hey, that won't benefit us. We're going to create something new. And I think that is what's important. But if you're so adamant about it's your way or no way, or that how could you be so stupid? Why would you see things like, we have a tendency to talk to people that way, or feel that way, or make people feel as if their way of doing things is just so wrong, or just so, not even the fact that it's different, but it's just like out of place. Where did you get that from? What kind of family did you come from? So that is when we have to really make decisions, even about, can we make this work? Does this even fit? Because if you're feeling like everything that I am doing is just so wrong, then maybe we're not a good fit.
So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and we're going to continue it next week on the show with Reverend Dr. Naomi Mitchell. But until then, please subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review so we can get this message out to the world. And again, if you're looking for resources such as counseling, Dr. Naomi Mitchell is accepting new clients, and so you can contact her on our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. So that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.